So today's hosts are me. I'm Veronica. I'm marketing manager at Petcube, and I'm also mom of Dune, the cute French bulldog that I adopted right before the pandemic started. And our veterinarian, Dr. Ross Bernstein. He's really cool veterinarian. He is specified for emergency cases. He helps pets like every day, every hour, and he's gonna share some tips on how to protect your pet during the hot season, during the summer season. Know that a lot of areas have summer like all all the year, so the webinar is gonna be very useful for all the pet parents. And why should you stay till the end? We prepared some cool gifts for those one who is watching the webinar. And first of all, it's a Q&A section with Dr. Ross. So after the webinar, we're gonna spend some 10 or 15 minutes and Dr. Ross is going to answer your questions like anything that you want to learn about pet protection during the summer season. Like some of you guys have already put the questions while you were registering the webinar, and we'll try to answer them also. And another cool option for those one who is watching the webinar is that we're gonna make a giveaway among the viewers and give away one of our Petcube cameras. It's gonna be Petcube Cam, and you'll become one of our pet camera owners. It's pretty cool. And the third feature, the third present that is ready for everyone who is joining us and everyone who actually gonna share the webinar on the social media is the emergency fund subscription giveaway and some rules how you can get an emergency fund subscription and participate in the giveaway. So you can make a photo of you watching the webinar, like grab your phone, make a selfie of you watching or film a story, share it on Instagram, feature our Petcube account, and after the 24 hours, we're gonna review all the tags with webinar and choose one participant and give away the emergency fund subscription. We're gonna contact you in Instagram, so feel free to share the webinar with your friends, with all the pet owners who are facing the hot season and who cares about the pets and how to protect them. After the webinar, you will have the cool results and really useful info, but also you're gonna know how to prevent your pet from the most common risks that your pet can face during the summer. You're gonna stay calm about your pet's health and no longer follow the myths about pet protection during the hot season. And you probably become one of the Petcube camera owners. That's pretty cool because our cameras are really the best and are really useful for you to take care of your pet when you're out of home and your pet is at home or when you're traveling. So here are some rules to make our webinar more effective and to make it comfortable for everyone who's watching it. You can make a question in comments and Dr. Ross is going to answer them during the Q&A session, like we are not interrupting anyone. We're going to present the topic of the webinar and after goes the Q&A session. The host some rules to a webinar. You cannot insult anyone in the comments, any rudeness, it's the immediate block. And the webinar is about 6 minutes long. And the giveaway rules I've already explained to you, but one more time, we're gonna choose a random person from the comment section and give away the camera. So feel free to share the comments, and we're gonna choose one person from those who are gonna share that you're watching the webinar and give away the emergency fund subscription. And now I'm gonna present our veterinarian before giving the micro to him. So there are some cool facts about our Dr. Ross. He had 1 year rotating internship in small animal medicine and surgery at the University of Illinois, 1 year specialty surgical internship in small animal surgery at Las Vegas Veterinary Specialty Center. Currently, Dr. Ross is an emergency room doctor at Veterinary Specialty and Emergency Center, and he is a medical director at Galati Airport Pet Hospital, and he oversees the treatment and cares about small animals and exotic pets. And he's graduated the U.S. Davis School of Veterinary Medicine, which is, the best veterinary school in the United States. So Dr. Ross is a really cool specialist, and he loves animals so much. And that is why when we were thinking about hosting the webinar, we were not hesitating on inviting Dr. Ross because, he's the best in this area, and I think you're gonna like him. So I guess it's time to share which pet do you have, like cats, dogs, or any exotic animals probably. Like feel free to share in comments because it's gonna make it a part of community among those who are viewing the webinar. And I'm actually having the French Bulldog, as I said before. French Bulldogs, they are very, they face a lot of risks during the summer season because they are brachycephal, and you better keep them under air conditioning because the hot weather is really risky for dogs like French Bulldogs, Pugs, actually for any pet. But yeah, 3 dogs, 2 bunnies, and a cat. It's awesome. It's so big pet family. I adore this. I guess we are switching to the topic of the webinar. So why are we actually talking about summer protection for pets? Why is it so dangerous? And I guess I'm gonna pass the micro to Dr. Ross. So, Dr. Ross, are you with us?
Hi guys, nice. Thanks for hosting me tonight. It's a pleasure to be here. So we're going to be talking a little bit about how to protect your pet in the summer or from warm weather or really hot weather. So this is a really important topic. Unfortunately, I did see a case at my emergency hospital last night of heat stress, which is the precursor of heat stroke. It was a Rottweiler, but like Veronica was mentioning, some breeds are predisposed to getting heat stress or heat stroke, but especially in the summer months, it's something that we can prevent. And so you want to be knowledgeable about it and stay prepared. So some important things to keep in mind is your dog's or your cat's normal body temperature is 99.5 degrees. This is in Fahrenheit, 99.5 to 102.5. So as that temperature starts to go up, some of their normal body functions can be affected. And so while we do see it in some breeds that are predisposed, really any breed can be affected. Dogs, for example, cool by evaporative cooling. So they pant a lot. I don't know if you guys have ever seen your dogs panting out in they stick their head out the window or just in general after they're exercising, but they don't sweat like we do. They don't have sweat glands in their skin. Instead, they pant. And so they open up the vessels around their mouth. It's called vasodilation. And so some dogs, like the brachycephalic dogs, brachycephalic means short face, like bulldogs, French bulldogs, pugs, boxers, those ones are going to be predisposed because their ventilation is not as good as some of our other breeds. That being said, any dog or cat can still be affected. We like to think that, or we always hear about dogs getting trapped in cars, which is definitely dangerous. You don't want to put a dog or your pet inside a car when it's hot outside. That temperature can increase very quickly, and the temperature inside the car can be much higher than the outside ambient temperature. They need that airflow. They need that ventilation to allow them to lose their body temperature and to go back to within normal limits. But so as that, just like short-faced dogs are affected, any breed can be affected. And so some of the first things you might see is first, and sorry, like I was saying, if you keep them in cars, but what we actually see more commonly is when they're exercising. And so if they're, and exercising can be anything, just from taking them for a walk to having them play ball, or even if you're hiking out with them in the sun. And so as their temperature is elevating, whether it's from just being outdoors, being in the car, or even from exercising, as your pet owner, it's important to recognize the signs of heat stroke or heat stress, the precursor to heat stroke, early. So there are steps and actions that you can take to prevent it from progressing and getting to a point that becomes an emergency. So some things that you can do is you want to walk them in the cooler parts of the day. So early in the morning or late at night. This avoids when the sun is the hottest. You can take them in shaded areas so that they're not exposed to direct sunlight. It's cooler in the shade rather than in the sun. But if you do start noticing them starting to develop some signs, the first things you might start seeing are if they're panting excessively, if they get tired easily, if they're trying to find shade. Those are some of the precursors that you see. As it starts to get worse, you can see that their mucous membranes start to turn bright red, or brick red, as we call it. That's what's from vasodilation. Is as their body is really trying to bring a lot of blood and heat to allow it to escape from their body, their mucous membranes can turn red. They often drool a lot, and then in even worse case scenarios, you can see vomiting and diarrhea. As this progresses, that leads to dehydration. That in turn, with the elevated body temperature, can lead to even neurologic signs such as fainting, coma, or even seizures and death. Now, none of us want to see that, so we touched upon some of the strategies to prevent that briefly, but let's go back there. So walking them in cooler times of the day. So going out in the morning before the sun is hottest during the day. At night, when it's a little bit cooler, try to spend more time in shaded areas. Know your dog. Know what things, when they start looking like they're tired. So if your dog doesn't normally pant that much, recognize that early. If you're taking them and you let them rest for 10 minutes in the shade and they're not catching their breath yet, don't start walking again. So keep them there, let them catch their breath. Always have water available so that they can drink and rehydrate. And then sometimes, so as you were talking earlier, that they cool down through evaporative cooling, sometimes you can bring a fan, or if they are in the car, air conditioning, or letting them have their head out the window to get the breeze. That can let them get some heat dissipated. There are some new fancy things out there, like cooling collars, like a thing that you can wrap on their neck that's kind of like an ice pack, cooling mats. What you don't want to do is, if you start seeing this, is dunk them in something like ice water. That can shock their body, and that can actually cause vasoconstriction, where the heat is not able to leave their body because the ice can cause the blood vessels in the periphery to shrink up, and that actually prevents heat loss. So that can actually make it worse. You want to let them lose the heat slowly. And then, of course, always bring them to your veterinarian. If you do get to your veterinarian in time, chances are they're going to be okay. So the sooner the better. Some studies indicate that about 2/3 of dogs getting to the veterinarian before the signs progress will have a positive outcome. So some of these are important things to keep in mind. Not going on to a slightly different topic, but sunburns in pets can still happen as well. Now, they're usually covered in hair or fur, so it's a little bit different than us, but they can still get sunburned. So especially in those areas like in dogs, in their underside, their belly, that are exposed to the sun, they can get solar-induced lesions. In cats, we often see it on their nose or the ear tips, and especially in the pale breeds or ones with white hair. So you can apply sunscreen. You always want to make sure it's a pet approved or pet safe sunscreen. There are certain sunscreens for people that can be toxic to pets, especially if you apply them and they lick them or ingest them. So we want to be careful of that. And then there's also, again, avoiding the hottest parts of the day or in the sun, so let them go in shaded areas. And then bodysuits, be nice if we had a little picture of them because they're really cute. But bodysuits, where if they have a covering over their body, that can help protect them as well. And lastly, one final thing is sometimes the ground can be very hot as well. So if you touch it with your hand, this is just a general rule. You touch it with your hand, if it's too hot for your hand, it's going to be too hot for their feet. So just keep that in mind. So moving on, do you guys have any questions so far?
I have little questions. So, as far as I understood, the overheating is actually it's actually the risk that each pet is facing every day, and it's the easiest to get to be overheated every day during the summer. So probably you can tell us some common myths about overheating for pets.
Yeah, so it can happen in the summer, it could happen in the winter, it can happen anytime their core body temperature gets elevated and stays at an elevated range for a prolonged period of time. We often hear about those really sad stories of pets being locked in cars with the windows closed or even cracked, and there's no airflow through them. But that doesn't happen as often as the pet who's exercising, and we don't notice as they overheat. Because dogs sometimes they want to go play with the ball, they want to run, or we even take them on a hike, and the hike is a bit longer than they're used to. And it's very hot outside. We didn't bring enough water. We don't have fans or water to be able to cool them down. And so we need to recognize these signs early, or even if we left them outside, and this is what the case that I saw yesterday, the dog was left in the backyard and it was way too hot and it was unattended and it was just left. And it's really sad, but just knowing of situations that we can prevent.
Oh, that was really interesting, and thank you for the info about it. And you told about sunscreen for pets. Is the human sunscreen okay for using for the pets? Like I'm using the sunscreen for my skin. Can I use the same sunscreen for dog? Any SPF rules like 15 or 50 that should be applied?
Yeah, I mean, so theoretically, you can apply it and it would be okay. And the higher the SPF, the more sun protection factor it will provide for your pet. The issue comes in is that a lot of human sunscreen contain chemicals and compounds. Zinc, for example, is one of them. That if that sunscreen contains that chemical, that can be toxic to your pet if they eat it. So a lot of pets, if you rub cream on them, they're going to start licking it. And so that's when it becomes dangerous. That's when you want to make sure you have a pet approved sunscreen. Now, there's plenty of ones that are pet approved or even for people that don't have those toxic compounds in them. So it's probably a general safe rule. If you got it from a pet store, it's going to be a safe sunscreen. But keep in mind that if you are using a people sunscreen, your pet can lick it and eat it, and then you can see some potential toxic side effects. So get a pet approved sunscreen, or one that I commonly use. It's made by Neutrogena. It's called Neutrogena Ultra Sheer. It's a stick. It's a SPF 70. It works great. And you really only have to put it on areas that are not covered by a lot of hair, because the sun still has to hit the skin.
Okay, thanks. It's useful. And we have some questions from the viewers from our Instagram, and we're gonna answer them for during the Q&A session. And now I want you to ask about more about the hydration, like how can we prevent it? What myths probably pet owners do have about the hydration? Like a lot of pets can just refuse to drink water, and how can we like encourage them to drink more water? And what is the balance, like the normal balance, water balance for pets, for cats, for dogs, probably?
Yeah. So dehydration is when the body loses water, and so that's going to cause your cell function to decrease, because water is involved in all of the organ function and cell processes. It also increases what's called the intravascular volume and helps delivery of red blood cells and oxygen to all the organs, to your brain, to your heart, to your kidneys, to everything. And it's just like you or I, we need water to stay hydrated. So especially when we're talking about heat stress and heat stroke, it's very important to always have water, ideally cool water if possible. It doesn't have to be ice water, but cool water that they can drink anytime that they need it. Giving it to them before as well as after. Usually if they're thirsty, they're going to drink. Sometimes I often get questions from pet owners, and this is an aside, not just related to heat stress or heat stroke, but if they're eating, usually you can assume that they're well hydrated, because they can get moisture from their food. But in terms of if they're exercising, if they're outdoors hiking, if you're just doing activities in the sun, you want to make sure they have plenty of water available, that if it's there, that they have it, that they can come and get it. You can also cool their temperature down by putting water on their coat, on their back, on their paws, and that can help with what's called evaporative cooling. So the water goes on the skin, it evaporates, it has a cooling effect. So that can help as well.
Okay, thanks. And what about lemon water or mint water that humans drink a lot?
Lemon water?
Yeah, like with lemon juice.
I think it's okay. In terms of it being safe, it's probably fine. I don't think that many pets would enjoy the taste of that. Some probably would, but I think probably sticking with a fresh water that doesn't have any additives would probably be the best way to go. But if that's all you had, then I don't see a problem with it.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna try some for my pet. And there are some risks for pets during the summer that we've discussed while preparing the info for the presentation, and I was really shocked that they could actually happen due to the hot season. It's the stroke risk, and how is it possible that heat could cause stroke and how to prevent it, and what are the symptoms actually of stroke?
Yeah, so as the core body temperature elevates, you're going to see all those things that we talked about first before you see a stroke. So if the body temperature, if the core body temperature rises, so the normal temperature again is between 99.5 and 102.5. And I'm not going to get into all the nitty gritty science details, and I'm happy to if that's what you guys want. But as the core body temperature elevates, cell function is going to be inhibited, and there's going to be dysfunction. Your organs are not going to be able to do what they normally do. Eventually you're gonna start to see gastrointestinal signs first. So that includes drooling, hypersalivation, lethargy, vomiting, diarrhea. Sometimes you don't see all of them, but generally do see some gastrointestinal signs first. If signs continue to worsen, then it can progress into neurologic signs. So that can be anything from collapsing to nystagmus, which is darting of the eyes, even seizures. And so when the cells in the brain start to lose control, that is when we have the neurologic symptoms or the seizures. And so really you want to try to prevent that as best you can. That means that heat stress or heat stroke is very severe. I think it's a bit of semantics at what point it comes from heat stress to heat stroke. But certainly if they're experiencing neurologic signs, such as collapsing, the darting of the eyes, ataxic or uncoordinated walking, if they have seizures, I would classify it as heat stroke, especially in conjunction with their core body temperature being extremely elevated. And so what we would do at the hospital is start active cooling to try to lower that body temperature. And the sooner that we can do it, the better. We always want to do it in a controlled fashion so that we don't cool them too far and then cause hypothermia, which is a low core body temperature. But you want to cool them, you want to rehydrate them with fluids, and often giving them a cool crystalloid fluid will bring that core body temperature down. But getting them to the vet sooner rather than later will help prevent that.
Oh, got it. And I guess when pet parents can accidentally close the dog in the car during the summer, is it the stroke that gonna happen, or like the overheating, like?
Yeah, so the temperature inside a car, so a car is going to be metal. There's going to be a lack of airflow. It's basically like you put them in an oven. It's not like an oven that's going to get to 600 or 400 degrees like if you're cooking your food. But if we keep in mind that their core body temperature has to stay at a certain range for their cells to function, if it gets that hot and there's a lack of airflow, remember, dogs cool by panting or by airflow. If there's no airflow through the car and that temperature just keeps rising, they're going to eventually start to overheat. And if they don't have water, if there's no airflow, if there's no other ways that they can cool themselves down, their body temperature is just going to keep going up. And eventually they're going to start to experience those signs: lethargy, drooling, panting, vomiting or diarrhea, and then collapse, seizure, and in worst cases, death. So it's not the actual seizure that causes the death, it's the elevated body temperature. And the seizure is probably just a physical manifestation of their body experiencing distress due to the elevated temperature.
Yeah, so like another important reminder, never leave a pet closed in the car because it's probably gonna kill them. And like a lot of people are doing it every season, every month, and I hope you gonna never face it. And we've heard a lot of really useful info from Dr. Ross, and let's sum up, I guess. So, Ross, would you please share like the tips, for example, 5 tips for pet parents that they can do right now, right after the webinar, the next day, what to take with them, whether they should walk their pets like in the early morning, let them swim into the pool, or like what to do, how to take care of your pet in summer.
Yeah. So we touched on this before. Five most important tips. Let's go with always have fresh, cool water available for them. Whether they're just outside, you want to make sure that they have water, or if you're hiking or doing some sort of activity, always have water. If you are doing an activity outside, tip number two, do it when it's not the hottest part of the day, so early in the morning or late at night. If you are doing it in the middle of the day, try to do it in shaded areas and recognize their signs. So if they are exercising and they're getting tired, let them rest, let them calm down, let them catch their breath, and give them as much time as they need to get their breath back and to cool down. Avoid putting them in cars or in places that are poor ventilated areas. So it doesn't always have to be a car. It can be outside too. If they're in a small area that's just exposed to sun and there's no shaded areas or no water, that can be bad too. And then lastly, always try to recognize the signs early. So know what your dog is acting like, if they're tired, if they're panting a lot, if they don't want to walk or don't want to run anymore, let them rest, catch their breath, and try to cool them down if you do start noticing these things.
Okay, and if we are, for example, at the forest, like hiking or at the beach or on the boat, and we are noticing that our pet is like, not feeling okay, how do we understand that this is an emergency or this is not? Like, what should we do first, and when when is it time like to go to the clinic, or what to do in case of emergency?
So the short answer is if you're ever concerned and are worried, call your veterinarian, call your clinic. They can point you in
Not
the right
Google,
direction. You can, sorry?
not call Siri, or not go Googling.
Yes, yeah, don't Google. I mean, you can, but you might not find the right information. Whereas your veterinarian will be better prepared to answer your questions and give you resources or direct you to a place that you can get help sooner rather than later. So if you're ever concerned, call your vet. But if you are in a place like in the middle of a boat, again, recognizing those signs early. If your pet is getting tired and panting a lot and they won't stop, that's a sign that they are overheating, and you do need to start some active cooling strategies. So to start cooling their temperature, providing them water, getting them into a shaded area, cooling them down, whether that's through a fan, putting them in air conditioning, putting ice packs over their places with good blood flow, like their jugular vein, in their armpit areas, in their groin. Again, you don't want to cool them down too fast. You don't want to just put them in a pool of ice water, but cooling them down and speaking with your vet to get the best advice that you can sooner rather than later.
Yeah, that sounds pretty safe. And like, if emergency is discovered early, the life of pet is probably gonna be saved, I guess, like you said earlier. And uh, I would like to introduce the features that can really help you in case of emergency. So it's our emergency fund by Petcube. It's an alternative to pet insurance, and it covers an emergency cases up to $3,000 per year. And if you have a lot of pets, like the Megan has three dogs, two bunnies, and a cat, it's like five pets. One subscription covers up to six pets, so you no need to activate the subscription, for example, for a cat and for a dog and for a bunny, like one subscription, and it's covering all the pets. And for example, if your dog got overheated and you understand it's an emergency, you can contact the vet online, ask all the questions, like not googling anything, ask the professional veterinarian, and he says that it's an emergency, and you go to the clinic, and the funds are covered like up to $3,000 per your dog. For example, if the same situation is happening with your cat or with any other of your pets, it's the same, like it covers like each pet. And the cool feature about emergency fund by Petcube is that there are no pre-existing conditions for like traditional pet insurance have. Any pet could be subscribed for an emergency fund and get help in case of some situations that you need to urgently go to the clinic and get the medical help. And it's pretty cool for pet parents for understanding that your pet is protected, and if anything happens, it's gonna be safe and your fund's gonna be safe. And it's actually 24.7 24/7 vet consultations, so you can access the vet online during any time, any season, like, and get the professional help. And I guess it's in case of emergency, that's really what you want to hear, like not googling the symptoms and not understanding what actually is happening with your pet. You are connecting to the veterinarian in couple of seconds. You understand what is happening with your pet and whether it is an emergency and you need to go to the clinic. And after you go to the clinic and you understand that you're gonna be protected, and your pet is going to be protected. And the emergency fund by Petcube was created exactly for the situations like this, and you can actually face them during any season, like, but in summer there are really a lot of risks for actually any pet, like overheating. The temperature is pretty high, and like anything could happen, and it's really good to be protected. So it's only $29 per month. It's actually less than $1 per day. And I'm sending the link to the chat where you can subscribe to emergency fund. You can try the service, and after subscribing, you are connected to the vet. Like, you connect here and you can ask any questions, and that's a really cool feature to use for pet parents. And we are at Petcube. We are everyone is a pet parent, and this feature could be really helpful. So the link is in comments, and for everyone watching us beyond the YouTube, you can go to petcube.com and access the emergency fund page and learn more about the service. But it's like my personal recommendation, and I guess Dr. Ross, what do you think about this feature? Like,
Yeah, I wanted to speak up earlier about it, but I'm incredibly impressed by this feature over here, this emergency fund. I don't know how many pets I see that their conditions can be treated if only they had the funds. And that's something that we can prepare for. So I think it's a very affordable option with only $29 a month, which is less than $1 per month, covering up to 6 pets, which is incredible. So like Veronica was saying, if you have more than one dog, if you have dogs, cats, rabbits, whatever, up to 6 pets can be covered up to $3,000 per year. So I think that's a very substantial amount, and that can definitely have you prepared for all sorts of emergencies. Maybe it doesn't cover everything, but at least it does cover a significant portion of it if your pet is experiencing a true emergency. And I can't emphasize enough how incredibly value I think this is, that they also have 24/7 vets available for a consultation that can direct you to a clinic that, if you are seeing what you're seeing is actually an emergency or not, to help you get the care that you need for your pet. So it's great to have this emergency fund available, and that's a very, I think, affordable options, to have up to $3,000 covered for that many pets. So I would say that I'm a big fan of that emergency fund.
Yeah, and I understand as a French bulldog parent that like we are facing risks like every day. It's like in TikTok every day, not all day every day, but every day. Yeah, unfortunately, like anyone who is having the brachycephalic dogs, I guess, understands the risks. And for example, there was one situation when my dog ate a chestnut, and we've discovered it a lot, a little bit like after this happened, and an urgent colonoscopy was needed, and it was so good to be protected for the fund. Like I understand how much money I saved because I just had the subscription, and I was not really thinking about when we're gonna use it. Or I was thinking if we're gonna use it's gonna be something connected to overheating or probably dehydration, because my pet likes to walk with me a lot, even during the summer. But I was not thinking about having the chestnut emergency situation. It was really creepy, but actually that's what happened. And you know that you're protected with like any creepy situation that your dog could prepare for you. So yeah, the emergency fund is a cool pet alternative insurance. And I guess we are ready for the Q&A. So we have some questions from our Instagram followers, and I'm gonna read them. The first one is: do you recommend shoes for dogs if it's hot outside?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no. So you can always do that. A quick rule of thumb: if you take your hand and put it on the ground outside, if it's too hot for your hand, it's going to be too hot for your pet. But if it's that hot, maybe reconsider taking them outside at that time of day. But if you have to, you have to. Now, if the ground is really that hot, yes, you don't want to burn their feet. But sometimes I often see a lot of people wearing them, like even in the house, or when it's not hot outside, or if they're just running in the grass. And a lot of times pets can't tell us if their boots or those shoes don't fit properly, and they can get sores from them, like bandage sores if they get wet, if they get irritated, if they don't fit right. That can cause some complications too. So it's always a cost-benefit analysis. You want to weigh the benefits of avoiding hot ground or burning their feet versus the risk of them wearing shoes that might not fit right, that might rub in inappropriate places, that might be too tight, and so it's always a cost-benefit analysis. Now I know they look very cute wearing them, but if they don't fit properly, that's not going to be comfortable for them. And sometimes they have a difficult time of telling you that they don't fit right. So.
Okay, thanks. And the next question is about a dog swimming in a pond. What do you think about it? Is it like okay, or is it dangerous due to the infections that are appearing in the hot water?
Yeah, I guess if your dog is swimming in hot water, again, you'd worry about them overheating, again, experiencing heat stress or heat stroke. There are definitely certain conditions that they can get out in water. So if there's blue-green algae or an algal bloom, that's probably one of the biggest risk factors of them swimming in a pond. If I had a picture of what blue-green algae looks like, but if there's a pond and there's a bunch of green stuff on the surface and your dog eats that, that can be severely toxic to them and cause basically liver failure within hours to days. So that's incredibly dangerous. There's also other risk factors associated with ponds, such as leptospirosis, depending on what area you're in. Leptospirosis is a bacteria that's usually transmitted by wildlife, but it's a bacteria that can affect the kidneys, the liver, a lot of different organs as well. So keep in mind where they're swimming, but on a hot day, certainly they can jump in the water and it can let them cool off. But again, if they're exercising and it's hot outside, even if they are wet, even if they are in water that can cool them down, still want to be cognizant of the factors that they're showing or the clinical signs that if they're panting and they will not and they're not able to calm down, that can be a sign that they're overheating. If there's any vomiting or diarrhea, and of course, like the neurologic signs, if they're having uncoordinated walking or they're collapsing or having seizures. So just keep all those things in mind, and ask your vet or hit up that emergency fund if you have any questions.
Yeah, exactly. And what about the swimming pools or oceans? I guess there are some regions where dogs can go surfing. Like, can the ocean be dangerous?
Yeah, the ocean. You want to know if your dog is some waves. Some dogs are not the greatest swimmers, so having a life jacket for them can be helpful as well, especially if they don't do it that often. Ingesting salt water is another big concern of them being in the ocean, as well as sand. I've seen in my clinic dogs come in for what we call a sand impaction, where they don't really even do it on purpose, but if you're throwing the ball for them at the beach and they're picking up that ball, and every time it goes in their mouth, they're eating a little bit of sand, they're going to eventually eat a lot of sand, and that can cause a lot of gastrointestinal upset or even an impaction where the sand causes a blockage and they're not able to pass their food through, and it can lead to a life-threatening emergency. If they are in the water and drink a bunch of salt water, that can lead to salt toxicity, which is a whole nother range of signs and symptoms. But you do want to get them to the vet as soon as you can. But again, knowing your dog, if they're a good swimmer or not, maybe you can be a little bit more adventurous. But maybe for your little French bulldog, make sure they have a life jacket.
Yeah.
And always supervise them. I think knowing your dog and knowing what they're capable of is probably the best. And having a plan in place, such as this emergency fund, that if something doesn't go as planned, you know what you can do to fix it.
Yeah, exactly. And like a question that I guess any pet parents is facing regularly is that I noticed that my dog does not want to eat on really hot days. I put the air conditioner on and leave out cool water. Is there anything else I can do to help him get through this summer?
So for specific questions with your pet, I think it's probably important to talk with your veterinarian to see if there are other underlying conditions that might be impacting their appetite or why they don't want to eat as well. Of course, if there's a whole range of reasons why they might not want to eat, so talking with your vet is probably the best way to go about figuring that out. But in general, some dogs eat once a day, some eat twice a day, but if you're noticing something that's unusual for them, that is a cause for concern, and you should probably talk with your veterinarian about that.
Yeah, I also think so. And I guess the final question for today is like it's pretty good to like finalize this Q&A session. And in the extreme scenario where a pet would be in heating distress, what immediate actions should I take while I'm driving to the emergency veterinary hospital?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So letting them get access to water, drinking, turning the air conditioning on as high as you can, or at least opening the windows so that they have airflow. If you have ice packs available, you can apply them to their neck, to their armpits, to their groin, probably about 10 minutes at a time, and rotate them. You don't want to make them too cold or even give them frostbite if it's actually ice on their skin. If you have a fan, if that's not available, if you have a towel, sometimes you can put water on the towel and then put that on them. So again, if you are noticing that your dog is in heat stress or heat stroke, giving them water, start the active cooling. Sometimes spraying water on their paws can help. Putting water on a towel, air conditioning, letting them be in a ventilated area, so opening the windows, and then get in contact with your vet as soon as you can. They can give you more tips and where to take them the quickest.
Okay, thank you a lot about for your tips because they're really really helpful for any pet parent, and we know a lot for pet protection during the summer season. And I hope every pet is going to be safe and happy during this summer and any other summers. And you know what to do to protect them, like follow the tips that Dr. Ross shared, subscribe to emergency fund, and you're gonna be safe. And I guess it's the giveaway time, so we are giving away the Petcube cam among those who shared the comments while we are streaming, so I can see all the platforms that we are now streaming, like YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and the website. And I guess it's gonna be fair to give a camera to one of the most active commenters for today. So guess Megan Sherman, if you are still with us. So I guess it's gonna be you who receives the Petcube cam, and you can actually spy for your big pet family, 3 dogs, 2 bunnies, and a cat. So actually 6 pets, and wow, like I guess it's a dream for a lot of pet parents to have like it's my personal dream to have such a big pet family. And I guess you're gonna be happy with our Petcube cam, and we will contact you after the webinar. And if you've previously registered it in the form, and just for checking if everything is gonna be all right, you can also contact us via the support Petcube in Instagram, like the easiest way for you. So we're gonna have your shipping details and ship the camera to you. So you are now a part of Petcube community, and we are really happy for this. And the giveaway of emergency fund subscription is another present for those who are sharing the info about the webinar, sharing it with your friends. So we're gonna review all the tags, all the mentions of the Petcube account. You can still share the insights after the webinar ends, so you can share it during these 24 hours that we are reviewing the results. Like share the tips that you learned from Dr. Ross. Share the question if you have any question on your mind after the webinar, and we'll try to answer them in our Petcube account. And among all the mentions, we're gonna choose one person and present a pet owner with emergency fund subscription. And I guess this is it. And thank you all for the webinar. It's our first webinar, and we are really excited for doing it with Dr. Ross, because he's really cool. He shared so much info with us. And the record of the webinar is going to be on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. And to subscribe to Emergency Fund, you can go to our Petcube or follow the link in comments. And this is it. For any question, contact support petcube.com. Just type as the question in Instagram. And thank you all.